Okay, so I started the record. So welcome to our DE&I Masterclass. I am Cory Salmela, founder of Salmela, an executive recruiting firm servicing the life science, advertising, PR, and communications, media, and real estate sectors. We'll have time for questions at the end of the discussion. You can to ask your question, or you can send it in the chat box. This is the first of a series of regular discussions we will have with the industry leaders and experts to illuminate the issues of our time. There is no other issue more important than today than diversity, equity, and inclusion. As a recruiting firm, we knew everything was going to change after the George Floyd murder in May 2020. And we knew we were going to be on the front lines of needing to be part of the solution when it comes to diversity in recruiting and job opportunities for the community. One of the first people we reached out to is Jebeh Edmunds, who is the founder and CEO of Jebeh Cultural Consulting. She's a veteran educator for 18 years, and I know families jumped for joy when they learned that Jebeh was going to be their teacher for their kids the next year. You know, I think that you're known for your high energy and your excellence in teaching, and I've heard that from a lot of people in the community. You have since left teaching and have gone full-time to consulting, where you have given numerous regional presentations related to diversity, African American history and heritage, and cultural competency. You work with companies on the issues of the day and help people and companies understand their responsibilities when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. You have a bachelor's degree in communications from University of Minnesota Duluth and a post-bachelor's teaching certificate and master's in science in teaching from the College of St. Scholastica. You also serve as the director of education at the Duluth Area Chamber of Commerce, doing important work there. You are a neighbor, and you live with your husband, Andy, in Duluth, and you have two boys that are going to keep you busy this summer, it sounds like. So, Jebeh Edmunds, welcome to the Salmela Masterclass.
Oh, thank you, Cory. Good to see you and welcome. I'm so excited to be here in your Salmela Masterclass. I just love working with you and your team.
Great. Well, you know, you did run a workshop with us earlier this year, and, you know, it was very effective. And I think what I liked most about it was this kind of real world storytelling that supported the mission, which, you know, kind of, for me, it really boiled down to, you really need to recruit more BIPOC allies, and the allies need the tools to kind of intervene on your behalf, you know, and the community's behalf, because you can't do it yourself. You know, you need those allies. I mean, did I kind of get the boiling down of what we went over, right?
Yeah, yes. Yeah,
Right.
there's an old saying that many hands make light work, and you have to have everyone to have that buy-in in order to make progress. Yes.
Great. Awesome. And you're doing that daily. So thank you for that. So why don't you just tell us a little bit more about yourself and kind of your path to get to where you're doing this work now?
Yeah, well, multiculturalism has always been a passion of mine. I emigrated from Liberia when I was 2 years old with my parents. We were fleeing a civil conflict there, and we ended up in the Twin Cities, in the suburbs around there. So I was the only Black girl, the only African kid, you know, in my class. So even from the first day of school, teaching my teachers how to say my name correctly, and showing them where I was born, and teaching my classmates, you know, how to treat me with respect, because there are so many stereotypical tropes, there still are, about people that are Africans. We call ourselves the people in the African diaspora, those of us that have left the continent of Africa and started a new life in the Americas and even in Europe. And so for me, growing up, I've always been a lifelong educator and learner. My parents were educators, so I get it from them. And, you know, going through this journey of being proud to be my full authentic self and to turn those stereotypes on its head. When people encounter me, when my students would be in my classroom, they'd be singing songs that my grandmother taught me and my, parents taught me how to do dances and how to cook. And, that just opened their scope of saying, wow, Mrs. Edmunds is right in our community. And look at what she has to bring. I have something special to bring too to the classroom. So it's not just a one-way thing. It's a multitude of different cultures. And that's what got me into this space. When I taught in my classroom for all those years, I felt this push in myself to impact as many people as possible. And so that's why I close that chapter of being that classroom teacher to impact as many businesses and community members that I can to keep doing this work, keep having those authentic conversations.
Well, fantastic. I mean, it's very impactful, and we thank you for that. So when you just kind of switch over to kind of the business world, because this is what our audience is working in this space, and there's a lot of angst about how do you effectively do this, and how do you effectively adopt an authentic DE&I approach. And what have you found when you're talking with companies and their employees? Are the biggest challenges, the biggest hurdles to doing that effectively and authentically, and not tokenism and all these things that we hear. So.
Yeah, I feel like the angst is primarily in not knowing where to start, which is the right path of starting. My best advice I give my clients is research. There's so much great research articles that are backed that talk about how to get started in this DE&I process. You really need to start from the foundational piece. And when we're talking about foundational piece, I'm not saying go ahead and consult with your BIPOC colleague that you work with every day. This is consulting books, articles written by people that are of BIPOC groups. These are the groups that are the most marginalized and affected when it comes to downsizing, when it comes to being, replaced or even not even considered for promotion. These are the groups that are the most effective. These are the groups that don't even get considered a callback for an interview. And so what good are you to do by being stuck by actually reading on these articles, these blogs that are written in their voice to show you what has been done and what we can do to fix that, how we can change it. A lot of us in this space are really focused in the recruitment piece, which is great because we're looking around our boardrooms, we're looking around our staffing, and we're looking and saying, Jeb, we're not as diverse as what we would hope to be. And that's where I come in and I show them there's a great need to have that push to say, wow, even looking in my community, it's very multicultural. And a lot of people think about, oh, but I need to recruit out of state. I need to recruit here. And I always give them the story. My parents came from Liberia to Blizzard Town, Coon Rapids, right? Minnesota. They didn't come here for the weather. They came for opportunity. And we exist. We're right here. And there's so many of our professionals that live right here that are keeping our local economy right here. So what good, can we do to harness the power that we have with our multicultural people right here to have them to continue to stay? Because a lot of our BIPOC families leave if the opportunity is not there. And that's a big piece.
Sure. No, and you touched on something that, I came to kind of prior to us meeting, and that was like, there was really no room for empathy for any other kind of walk of life unless you've at least done a little bit of work, right? And you've read and you've listened to and you watched kind of the voices and understand what it means to be like, someone different than yourself. And so, that seems to be a pretty important part of the solution is the listening part, the reading part, so, I think that's kind of the base. But then, we found what I think a lot of people who have done the work have a trouble next with is how in these kind of really destructive microaggression situations, which mean nothing to the perpetrator, right? But are so destructive. Like, how can we become better equipped and informed to handle those situations? Because there's encourage involved, but there might be some tools too that I think that you've hit on with us in the past.
Yeah, and the biggest piece I would say is to practice, because people that are the perpetrators of those microaggressions, it's a pattern. They feel so emboldened and comfortable to say those comments, those little jokes, the refusing to include people on purpose because of their views. And they feel like, hey, I've done this. I've been in this space for a long time. Now you're telling me to change my behavior. And so the person that is getting that micro insult, the microaggression towards, and we're all listening and hearing the same thing. What I really would like people to do is this, to validate what has been said. Like, oh, that comment is not welcome in this workplace. And that will have everybody understand that, wow, yeah, Jebeh didn't just hear that. We all heard that, and we're not going to take it. And I feel like it's that power in numbers. I've been in situations where I've had people call me, oh, I love your beautiful black skin, or you're a black unicorn, right? Nobody said anything, but they're texting me under the table, or they're, coming to my classroom and they're seeing me crying and they're saying, oh, I'm so sorry that happened. I don't know why that person keeps saying it, but I'm looking at the person saying that sorry to me, and I'm saying to them, well, you're allowing it. You're still allowing this environment to continue. And for me, some of us, Cory, might be thinking, I don't want to be that white savior, Jeb. I'm there for you. I want to be your ally, but I'm afraid to kind of stick my neck out. And to me, I say, stick out your neck. Because for me, if I say something back, because trust me, when you're insulting me and my well-being, I'm going to try and say something. But then I have to think, this is my reputation. What if this person comes and retaliates against me and my family? But Cory, if you say something, they're going to have to go after you and me. That's too many people. And there's another person they're going to have to go after. That's too much, And so that's something where if it were me to say something right away, I have to keep thinking in the back of my mind, is it worth it? I'm going to have to write this down and document it again, turn that into HR. Is HR even going to do it? They might just hold on to it in that file. And so those are the things, Cory, that a lot of us have to have that courage, but that courage comes with practice, because a lot of things, when it happens, some of us have that deer in the headlights look, and then the moment's passed and then it's gone, right? But when you practice it, trust and believe that person's going to come back and say it again or say something else. And you have to be ready to go. You have to be ready to say something. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so, the aftermath of those sticky situations are, what are some things that we all can do to, I don't know, I mean, maybe it's not capable of cleaning up, or, it kind of depends on the reaction to the microaggressor, right?
Yeah, and just have to know, people aren't going to like you. Not everyone's going to like you, right? Yeah. And so for you have to think about this. Is it me to help save my own face, or am I trying to protect a colleague of mine and their safety? Because culturally safe, if I'm at the, copy machine and this person is saying something derogatory, right? And you stood up and you said something. Okay, you got burned too because you stood up and said something. Well, now they don't even want to invite me to that golf game anymore. Well, is it worth sacrificing that golf game? Right? Because for me, it's like, well, thank you for saying something. Thank you for reporting this to the HR rep, because the HR needs more evidence than just me sending in my file, right? So it's all goes down to, this is hard stuff. This is stuff where we need to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. I say that a lot with my clients because, not everybody's going to like you. People are going to call you woke. People are going to do that. But trust me, I've been called worse at work. So what price do you have to sacrifice versus the price that I have to sacrifice? So that's something a lot of us people in the white majority culture need to get their head wrapped around, especially Minnesota and this Minnesota nice. I just say that's a trope. It hasn't been nice for a long time when it comes to people of color. And so when we're talking about getting in and just saying that's not okay, you have to have that courage and say, yeah, it's not okay. I love Brene Brown when she said, I'm here to get it right, not to be right. And sometimes the right thing, you're going to have to step out of your comfort zone and speak up.
Yeah. So, we've talked a little bit about the interpersonal piece of this. On the leadership front, like how can a leader kind of build a culture of accountability around D&I and because we can be also really nice and not inclusive, right? Like everything is great on the surface, but there's just they're not even microaggressions. They're just like the inclusion, the I part of the whole thing.
Yes.
And then that's the hardest thing that there is. So there's the accountability thing that a leader can drive. And then there's that inclusiveness that, really like it takes the whole village.
And I feel like, yeah, for sure, Cory. And I feel like in a leadership-based position, having more inclusivity talks, including everybody, having places and safe spaces where all of the employees in your department can help create what they feel an inclusive workplace should look like. A lot of leaders that are doing things very successfully, they ask people of all of their departments, how should we make this go? Here's the overall vision. Now, as a team, how can we make this vision come to fruition? And I think when you have everybody in buy-in of how to even start in the very beginning, that's how a leader really does this DE&I scope very effectively versus this is what we're doing because we have to do it, go. It doesn't work that way because so many people, would have confusion. So many people would say, well, it just affects Jebeh and other people in our office. I don't need to pay attention to it, so we need to have everybody to have buy-in. And with that too, that leader needs to say, you know what? We're all human, but this is what we can do to make sure everybody in the company, in the organization feels culturally and psychologically safe. Because we take those measures for physical safety, but we also need to take those measures to be culturally safe as well.
So what's the best way to kind of measure progress and, and evolve? And, I'm sure there's going to be iterations that, are kind of clunky and
it will be clunky.
And you're overthought and, there's too much that went into them or it just the buy-in part of it, I guess.
The buy-in.
What you mentioned is huge. But yeah, how does it evolve over time?
Well, my biggest advice for that is you have to do quarterly checks. We're always checking our financial goals and things quarterly. This should be a part of your quarterly check. A lot of people feel like we have our laundry list of initiatives in DE&I, and then we get overwhelmed because we see that big old list. So I always say, make your big list, make it a mile long if you have to, but prioritize your top 2 or 3, and then check in on that quarterly. And that as an organization, when I'm checking on something quarterly, I'm going to have more attention and focus on it versus, this is a one-time a year thing. We'll check back and find out how we've done. And to me, that's when things kind of go at the wayside and sticky things start to creep up because we're not paying attention to it. So my biggest advice with clients that I've worked with is do this as a quarterly check.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, kind of shifting now over to kind of the attraction and retention of diverse populations. Like what are some of the things that you are working on with clients to do that? I mean, especially like in the upper Midwest where we are, it was a long way to come to get here. We didn't get a lot of migration at this northern latitude. So there's that piece. There's the, like, what do we need to be as a company? Obviously everything we talked about, but how do we talk about that from a recruiting perspective?
Yes.
One example was, when this all started, becoming a big national and international conversation around the George Floyd situation, was, the BIPOC candidates were being recruited so heavily that they felt it was too much. So there is that, and they didn't always, some expressed to us this overwhelming, they were kind of a number in a way.
Yeah, and you do feel like that diversity hire. But also check, Cory, because my challenge to you, 3 years after his murder, are those numbers as overwhelming as it is? Because you can have that motivation to recruit. But that retention has gone way down. And part of it was COVID. But the other part is, am I feeling like I can be in this workspace safely? Those are those same elements that we talked about earlier. There's an instance where somebody would probably say, oh, what's a Jebeh? I don't even know the gender of Jebeh. Who is this? Right? And I could be skirted somewhere else. So there's so many layers to that. But another thing to think about too, Cory, is when we're talking about the mass recruitment and how to have that, network with these associations. There's so many BIPOC fraternities, sororities, associations that do business networking after hours. Those are the things that companies need to step out of their comfortable box, because a lot of us, we will go to what is safe in our eyes. They're still human beings doing the same things, having summits where you can set up a booth right there saying, hey, we're hiring, or we need to connect you, candidate, for this particular, medical entity. There's so many of these places that you might have to travel, regionally, but they're there and they have been there for a long time. And on the other hand of that, there's so many of our associations saying, hey, we've been here. We just want a shot to get in. Because there's still those doors now in 2023 that, oh yeah, it's kind of died down. The civil action has kind of died down. So we're good now. We've got our number. We've got our magic number. So there's still that interest of, we just need to get in and we will show you what we know. And so we just don't want to close that gap. That's the biggest thing.
Yeah. And what kind of advice are you giving clients around the interviewing and evaluation process, that, this unbiased interviewing, and, how effective are you seeing those things go?
Yeah, the biggest piece I did a lot of research on is even redacting names because of our own unconscious biases. If we see an ethnic sounding name or a name we can't, decipher gender, that person won't get called back, and we lose wonderful candidates that way. So I've given advice of just redacting, the person's name and just looking straight forward to their resume, I think is really big, Cory. You'll be so amazed how many more applicants get through that first phase just by redacting names. And you might feel in your best intentions that you don't have bias, but subconsciously you are passing those people along. And so that is another big thing. Another thing too is there are a lot of cultural groups that even have American sounding names out of fear that you cannot pronounce their American name. So if you see on their resume that they have 2 names and you do a call-in, phone-in interview, Zoom interview, ask that person first, how would you like to be addressed? That is the biggest thing you can do versus trying to pronounce the name. Then you get all flustered and that person goes, no, try again, right? So ask them first, how would you like to be addressed? Goes a really long way. It has both of you feeling more confident and comfortable to start the interview process versus the guessing game and, oh, I don't know, let's see, and then that just goes out the wayside, because on a personal level, if you're not going to try to ask, how do you say your name? It just shows me that, yes, it may be difficult to you, but it's like Jennifer in Liberia for me. It's a very common name in Liberia. So having that conversation of taking that time to ask, how do you say your name? What do you prefer for me to call you? It just goes a whole new level of respect to that person.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of our policy. If we don't know the name, it's the kind of the first thing that comes out of our mouth. How would you like to be addressed? What's your, how do you pronounce it? Do we get that correct?
That's huge.
And so great. Yeah, I think it's great advice. It feels like we kind of maybe skirted the inclusion part, like the cultural part of an organization, and that feeling of belonging. And I mean, I think businesses are interesting creatures because it's not really your family, but it's a place where you spend a lot of time and you want fulfillment from the work. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're there for the other people, but that's part of the equation for sure. I think it's the meaningful work is probably number one in most people's mind, but that feeling like, hey, I want to go and see these people. I haven't seen them in a while. I've been working from home. I want to go to the office, that kind of thing. Like how can we, as organizations, foster that feeling of belonging?
Oh, just keeping safe spaces, if there's someone who is of the Muslim faith and there's a quiet room that they can just go quietly and do a quick prayer and then get back to work, things like that go a long way. Things of, when I'm sitting there and I'm at the, in the cafeteria, I'm heating up my fish and gravy, rice. Don't make comments, just those are the little things that make me feel like I belong, for someone to feel like I'm at work, I'm enjoying what I'm doing, but I still have to put my culture at the door. I can't be my full authentic self. There's so many of us that have to do that. You know what? I'm going to leave my rice and gravy because someone's going to make a comment on my food for lunch. Cory, you might not realize of all these other steps people like me have to take in order to be, appeasing to my work friends, right? So I'm constantly trying to prove that I'm worthy to be in your space. Even though I've been hired, even though I've been there for multiple years, there's still things, I have to straighten my hair because it doesn't look professional. So those are the things that people need to consider of that inclusivity piece. You can hire me, you can hire as many people, but if you go into the minutia of hair policy, of Ramadan, we have this, we can't do that, or, different kinds of walks of life, we need to have a safe space for all. Even a mother's room so she can, pump in privacy without having to, go in the bathroom, so there's so many things we can include all people. Inclusive bathrooms, those are the things that we are putting in place that are the little things that go a long way that, you don't have to overthink it, Cory. A lot of people do, but you don't have to.
Yeah. And I think, the devil's in the details. Like this, that's what it sounds like. Like you have to ask.
Yeah, and that's what stops a lot of companies as well, Cory, because they're thinking too much of the details of, I just want my lunch in peace. Or, my name is Jebeh Fambale. Oh, you can't say her name right. Or, just little things like that, go a long way. And also, too, if there's an issue, in the workplace where you stick and you are, consistent with the protocol of how things go. Because a lot of us are also observing, if I came about a dispute or something that happened and that person doesn't get, the consequence that fits, then I'm going to say, well, looks like there's no accountability here, and I'm going to look for someplace else where I feel like I can work and be my full self. So yeah, that's a lot of that too that goes on.
Yeah. Well, good. So I want to open it up, and I know you have places to go. But I do want to open it up for questions and you can send a question in the chat room, or you can unmute and I'm going to check the chat here. You can unmute to talk to Jebeh about ask the question directly. So I'll open that up. Great. We have about, like 5-10 more minutes here. Great. So, we've talked about, resources, and I know that you kind of maintain that, and what we can do with the recording is, attach those resources, but tell us a little bit about things that you've read, that reading books, or if there's any other programs that make sense.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So one of my favorite books is called The Diversity Gap by Bethany B. Wilkinson. And she's an African-American corporate, wonderful person. And she has a lot of research, yes, about inclusive workplace strategies. She even has actionable questions that you can answer and work on as a team. She does a lot of great organizational work. Harvard Business Review is like my go-to, and they've got a great top 10 articles on diversity. That's another great one. And if you really want some, good focus on inclusive workplace strategies, I've created a digital a digital course that goes live next week, Monday, on cultural competency in the workplace, how to be more effective on DE&I strategies in recruitment. There's even a little module I have says, wait a minute, I can't say that. So like taboos and nuances, and just how to get acclimated with, all of the new terms that are out there as well. Like you mentioned earlier about tokenism and cultural appropriation. Those are the real big topics that companies need to understand while we're moving forward. Yeah.
Well, I just wrote those into the chat group, so you can take a screenshot if you want to bring those along. I would like to maybe ask a little bit about kind of your process with companies, and kind of how you do your discovery, and can you I'm assuming you're doing remote consulting as well. It doesn't have to be in person. So can you give us a little bit of a flavor on how you work as a consultant?
Oh, yes. Well, it's very simple, actually. You can just go on my website, jebehedmunds.com, and there is a kind of a 4-step process, but it kind of starts of just setting up a free Zoom call, 20-minute consultation. I even have a potential client questionnaire. It's a quick Google form that you'll take before we have our Zoom call meeting. It really helps me and my potential client to know what DEI trainings they've had in the past, or if they haven't had any. And then that can kind of work with the type of programming that I could suggest for them. And then we'll go in and come up with some really cool topics that I've created. Some work on if the company wants to do more on implicit bias training, cultural competency, recruitment and retention, and even how to be more culturally responsive with your multicultural staff and clients. I have a great training program on that. And then, yes, some clients I've had multiple times in a series. I've had retainerships, which has helped me really help a company of revamping their whole leadership curriculum series. So it's been really fulfilling and a very, good process I've seen in this work I've done for 3 years. And we could do trainings in person or even on Zoom. So yeah, I'm excited. Yeah.
Well, good. I'm opening it up again for questions if anyone has any. Otherwise, hey, this has been, as always, a great conversation. I really do appreciate you taking the time from your busy schedule, because I know that you're in high demand to talk to us today. And
Thank you, Cory.
for those listening, we will have this packaged multiple ways. There'll be a transcript, there'll be a podcast, and then a recording, a video recording that we'll send out to everyone who attended or signed up that didn't attend. And it'll be on our website at meetsalmela.com. So again, Jebeh Edmunds, appreciate your insights. Always informative and always, edifying. So appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much, Cory, for the opportunity to share with your team and everyone out there. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. All right.